Thank you guys for joining our virtual office hours.
Thank you, Maria.
Through. Of course. As you guys know, my name is Maria Marsh. I'm the Wildfire Prevention Specialist with Truckee Fire, and Truckee Fire serves as the regional coordinator for Firewise. We do not administer the Firewise program, and we don't review applications. We support our communities that are applying for or in the Firewise program with the application process. And then we're also here, obviously, as a resource for connecting with all of the programs that Truckee Fire provides. Today, we are doing, let's see, all my things are out of order. Today, we're talking about inspection data and green waste data as well, actually. We've had a lot of requests from Firewise communities for aggregate data that they can use to compare either their own community from one year to the next or their community to the district, for example. And we are increasingly gaining tools that allow us to provide that information. What I'm hoping we can do today is brainstorm a little bit. I'll show you some of the capabilities that we have and get some feedback from you guys on what's helpful, what's not necessary, and find the intersection of those things. Next month and in November, we'll be talking about annual renewals as the renewal deadline comes up. And as always, I like to highlight a partner event. ERFWC, the local coalition, is hosting their monthly meeting. Next month, they host it every Tuesday at the Tahoe Donner Alder Creek Adventure Center. There are a couple of other organizations that are hosting some events that I will include the links to when I send out our Firewise Focus newsletter tomorrow. So Tahoe Adapted Communities has 2 upcoming events in this community webinar series. The next, I think, is a great one for our communities, which is about effective ideas for helping your community take action. And the subsequent one would also be super helpful, which is how to keep the community engaged. So I'll send a link for those. And secondly, Jackie with Placer County is hosting some additional workshops in anticipation of renewal season. These are all on the Placer County Firewise website, and I'm going to click into one and show you that on her calendar, she's doing this series of workshops that are taking place locally down the hill, but they are also all available to join into remotely. Or, no, my mistake. Those are all in person. And then she has a virtual Zoom specifically for, people getting help online on the 2nd, on October 2nd. So like I said, I will share links to those when I send out our Firewise Focus email. But for today, we're going to dive into a couple websites that I've prepared for you guys to show you what sort of reporting we have available. Give me 1 second to find my screen. All right, so I put together a couple dashboards to show you guys what sort of information we have access to and what we can make available as a live feed, basically. Can you guys both see my screen? Bonnie, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So type in whenever you feel like it. For the purposes of today, have these reports filtered to the full district. And we can make them all available to any particular Firewise community. The first thing that I'll show you is we have basically a Firewise observations report, and this is their attempt to make it easier for us to fill out the observations section, basically the checkbox section of the Firewise risk assessments. The challenge is that when we inspect, we don't always inspect the positive absence of something. For example, we don't necessarily always identify that there's nothing combustible under a deck, for example, or that there is 6 inches of non-combustible siding from the ground, that sort of thing. What I end up providing to you guys is this information. I'm starting to provide the actual snapshot that we have so you can see what the reporting says. But then I also go into our, we call it query builder, that lets me do sort of more fine-tuning searching of information. And that's where I get information. For example, I'll say 97% of the community has non-combustible roofing. However, we found 50 instances of tree limbs overhanging or touching the structure, and however many instances of pine needles on the roof, so that we sort of get a full picture of what the hazards are that intersect. So that's sort of a snapshot. The percentages are only available for these specific items, and we don't have reporting that says, for example, a percentage of properties that are compliant. We don't have the capacity to do percentage or number of structures that have zone 0 violations. So those are some of the things. Yeah, please go ahead, Bonnie.
So all of this is negative, basically, information. And you're trying to provide the positive side for comparison.
It's not necessarily negative. We have a lot of positive things here. The non-combustible roofing is a positive finding.
Okay.
Homes with wood roofs is a count, and that is a vulnerability. Resilient windows is a positive, but this seems underreported to me for some communities, and it may be that an inspector is not identifying the dual pane windows. So what I then also do is I search all of the stats for single pane windows, so that we have a specific count. If you're kind of thinking like, okay, what are the other 14% of the windows? And it sort of fills in the gap a little bit to say, this is how many single pane windows were identified, for example.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. What else do I want to cover here? So other things that can be a little confusing is that indicator of the percent of structures with metal gutters. Most of our structures here don't have gutters. The majority of our structures don't have gutters. The way that the Firewise risk assessment asks the question is data-wise an assumption that every structure has gutters. So the question is, how many of the homes have resilient gutters, have metal gutters, as opposed to vinyl gutters? Well, the way we answer that question is as a percentage of the homes that do have gutters. So of homes that were observed to have gutters, 82% of those had metal gutters. And the remainder were either vinyl gutters or we couldn't determine the material. So you see that it gets a little challenging with the way the questions are asked and the way we're
Yes.
able to represent the data.
That
Yes.
specific question. So there's nothing I can do about this or you can do about this. We're both data people. But that specific question was in one of the elements that was shared with the Pine Forest Board, and which included the design committee, the retired fire chief, battalion chief, and a long time battalion chief. I say the Canadian way of saying it.
Oh,
And then like the community president who like just we all built our own homes here, so very few people buy homes, they're all custom. So the immediate knee-jerk response was, we don't have gutters here, it's not in our design guidelines. What a dumb question. And so again, I had to say, well, we're mapping it to this form and really it's mapped this way, blah blah blah, we're good. And the response from the average human was, if it's not precise, then I'm going to throw the entire information piece away. And it was really unfortunate. That's an example. I mean, you can't fix that. Jason could, but I was surprised. And it was kind of like, well, our designs forbid this, so why are we even talking about it? And then I had to say, look, I've been to hundreds of properties across different counties in Placer and and most people have gutters. We just don't have them here because we're in a snow country. Oh, okay. So I said, NFPA is a national organization. Cut them a break, and then we could move to the next topic. But it was unfortunate, And to your point, you're already I already knew what you guys were doing. You're already adapting the data.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a challenge, right? Because there is no option on the NFPA risk assessment form for other. So
Correct.
we have to answer the question. And in fact, the most positive answer is 100%. Right? 100% of the homes.
96% for our community. So I'm like, 96 is like out of 118, 68 built homes. No big deal, guys. Move on. Yeah, it was I'm just giving feedback, not that you could do anything about it. It was just like, I was like, huh? You're getting tripped up on that? Wow. Okay, let's move on.
Well, so that's a good example of why, I would like to put an asterisk along with all of these reports. Let me see actually if I can. So the one thing that we might be able to change, right? Because we're not making the question, we're answering the question that NFPA asks. So it's not even Jason and FireAside, that they're just taking our data and answering the question as best as we can. The explanation that they have here, percent of improved homes that have metal gutters, we can ask him to change the content there so that it says percent of homes with gutters that are metal rather than whatever else, so that it's
the point is about the risk. So we just don't allow gutters. So if there's no gutters, they're just as good as metal gutters because nothing is going to get caught in them.
Right. It's better than metal gutters because there's
right. So it's kind of like they needed a way to better. I mean, I knew what it meant, and I could pinch it because I've seen enough homes with gutters to know that we're unique here. And I said, and it's a good thing. There's some things that we do in our design guidelines that are very, very good.
That are good.
That are, that means every home in our community will be compliant. There's some things in our design guidelines that aren't like that. And let's talk about, whether we want to introduce non-combustible siding as an example, as a topic for vigorous debate.
Right.
Right. But anyway, so that was just and then when I said, here's the risk form that we have to fill out, it doesn't have an option for no gutters. So really, it's a national problem, again, it was unfortunate because really, what would have been a useful focus would be, are there things that we aren't scoring always consistently high on, that we want to either introduce education to the community, and no one will change their gutters here, so they're asking me, as a dumb example, to take all conversations about siding. No one will change their siding here, so they're asking me to remove that from my Firewise communication. Okay, but what about the new houses we haven't built yet?
Right.
Can we include it there? because it's that pushback where we didn't, in the initial build, the design guidelines and the building code was different, and so we built it one way, and now it's just too expensive to change.
Of course. And that's the case for across the district. We have a lot of different build types and design types. So, you know, circling back to the dashboard, I'm trying to create a public dashboard that answers everybody's questions, but some people are going to have to interpret and understand which data doesn't really apply to them, or that they, you know, can explain further. So that one of the challenges for us is explaining the fine details of those points. So again, another example, one of the items is the percent of structures with non-combustible siding. Well, we record the primary siding. So a structure might have wood and rock and metal siding. If it's all relatively equal, then an inspector might mark all three on the structure, because there's information that then generates to the report that we want the resident to have. Well, the report takes all of those into consideration. So the 26% with non-combustible siding doesn't mean that those properties don't also have combustible siding. So again, it's, you know, it's always about looking through the data a little bit and understanding what information it is that you're looking at. So that's sort of explaining to you guys the Firewise risk assessment data and the information that you will get when you get those reports. There's one other thing that you asked that I wanted to speak to, which is the distinction between number of properties inspected versus number of inspections. Number of inspections counts the number of times we have been into the neighborhood and started and completed an inspection on a property. So if I've been to Heather's house 3 times, that counts 3 times towards number of inspections. Number of properties inspected includes only unique properties. So no matter how many times I've been to Heather's house, it's only counted once. Okay. And that's another challenging distinction, but we do have both cards for both of those data points. And it's something that we can try to, I think in the next report that I'll show you, I've changed it to unique properties inspected, which hopefully brings that logic through to people. So I wonder, because you have the definition of the Firewise perimeters when you come into the community, is that or is it by HOA that you're coming into a community and defining the boundaries? Not quite sure on what you're asking. So what would be what got them confused was the mismatch between the number of properties and what they think their community area is. So what they wanted to know was, well, in our case, it's our Firewise community does include a handful of common property and some neighbors, and it would be okay if it also included them.
but I'm just assuming there's a perimeter. So there's a certain number of parcels within that perimeter. It would be nice to know how many, whether every parcel, like that was kind of their second question was every parcel inspected? Because the numbers don't line up to, we have 118 parcels, and I think the number was, it was just different enough that they queued on it. And it's not the number of inspections, that makes sense, you know, if you have multiple inspections for one property. But basically they didn't know if their property was inspected, which it always comes down to the individual, but they were kind of asking the question about the
Does this
perimeter.
include my property? Right.
It would be useful to know map wise, was a property inspected or not, so you could see it. If you can't do it on a map wise, at least on a number wise, there's 100 in this come into my community, how many properties are there and how many were inspected? I don't know if the tool would allow you to pull that, but that would be helpful, because then you'd go, okay, well, the coverage of this data is pretty good, or the coverage of this data is only half the properties ever got inspected. So there's some unknowns.
Yeah. Let me roll down here to give you this is some of the data that I have pulled together, and the type of report that we would be able to create that goes into a little bit more detail. So imagining that this was on the Firewise community level, we could show, yes, the number of unique properties inspected. I don't know.
So this is by year. So the question would be, which would be really helpful. I would love this. I mean, even at the aggregate level, this is really interesting. But if it were for just my community, how many in the last 3 years, because you visit every third year, so presumably in the third year everyone gets inspected, how many are inspected in the in-between years? And then is every year a unique property recounted? So if I had my property inspected once every year, it's unique for every year. Is that how this aggregates?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe so, because it's pulling that's a good point, actually, because I'm going to make a note of that question.
Why at the reporting up level, I would understand why Truckee Fire would be really interested in aggregates, because over a period of time, I think the total properties you have to inspect is around 30,000. I'm guessing, I don't know, whatever the number is. So when I look at 12,000 unique ones, I immediately go, hey, you know what? In the last 4 years, I've looked at half the community. I'm pretty confident that I have a handle on things. Well, similarly, for my own little community, if you were doing it just in my Firewise perimeter or HOA, it doesn't matter to me which one you pick. It's small enough that I know those properties personally now.
Sure.
As you can imagine. So, so that would be a similar, very, very interesting statistic. And then in our community, they're deciding whether they need secondary inspections. I don't know why they bother, because I don't know what impact they have, but the HOA board can send out a note saying, we've observed generally fire safety violations, like too much firewood, and just more generalized 100-foot property fire safety, not really detailed Truckee level FireAside inspections.
Sure.
And they were doing that, or we have been doing that for 7 years, and so it's kind of like, do we need to continue this? We now have Truckee Fire coming in, and we're going to confuse people if we don't use. My point was, we're going to confuse people if we don't use the same terminology. Truckee Fire would like us to to allow them to do that, and I got I got a giant lecture over this because we've been doing it one way, and this was perceived as a pretty big change, and the HOA has a responsibility, and then it's different from Firewise, blah 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 blah. But
Sure.
never mind about that. These statistics would be the beginning of kind of more thoughtful risk assessment, because to your point, the inspection access really matters. And just driving in front of people's properties, I can't really tell if they're safe or not. I just can't. I need to walk around them, as you know.
So in the context of the dashboard reporting, we do not have a card that says the number of properties. We have a card that says the number of improved parcels, which is anything that's not marked as unimproved, undeveloped, which would basically be the vacant lots. But we don't have something that's a count of the number of parcels. But that's the same. Sorry, where am I going? That's the same on your risk assessment. It asks for a count of the number of dwellings. That being said, again, in the context of the risk assessment, we get county data and share that with you, which is a full count of all of the assessor's data of the number of parcels which are developed and the type of development. So it says the number of residential parcels. So that's something that I probably shared with you when I sent you everything at the end of the inspection. So some of it is going to be going back and forth between that info and what we have on the dashboard. And then, yeah, it looks like this is not truncated my key here a little bit, but this can give you some sort of information of, how thorough the data is, that, over 50% are only street level inspections. So, the more full access inspections we get, the more accurate the data is. And then some other information that I am trying to sort of encourage Firewise leaders to look at is the engagement at the inspection and the report open rate. So when we are doing our curbside inspections, if we knock on the door and nobody's home, then obviously that's when the majority of the not home inspections will occur. However, we also have full access inspections where they've requested for us to come out, but no one's planning to meet us. They just want to review the report. We find that we get the most actual follow-up and action from people if the person walks with the inspector when we do the inspection. So full access is one thing in that it's improving our data, but actually having the resident or homeowner or property manager or even contractor walk with us actually feeds to more action. So that's something that we are, communicating and trying to encourage as well. And then the open rate has increased significantly this year with some increases in communication. But if someone doesn't open their report, then it's a lot less likely that they're actually taking any actions. There is always the chance that, especially if someone walked with the inspector, they're doing the work and don't feel the need to access the report. But chances are good that we can, assume that the majority of these people are not taking action, whether they're, reporting it back to us or not. Is there any other info that you would like to see about the actual inspection rates and the engagement?
So, I think this is, if I could get it for, like I'm looking at the number of dwellings that we got from the county, and I could map it to each year. So I could kind of get a sense of like how many properties were looked at each year. I think this is really great one of the weird pushbacks I got, Maria, and it's not about the data. It's about the value proposition and getting engagement. I got a really weird pushback. Like, I don't want any public official looking at my property. So in my case, they will be walking up to the doorknob and they will ring the doorknob, and then I will not walk with the property with them. And I was like, well, why not? Well, I'll just let them do their job. Okay, but this opportunity, and I was really struck by the resistance to education, because I said, well, like, what if you had a big vent? Well, why are you talking to me about vents? And they said, well, here's a story, da 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 da, embers, events, blah blah blah, house burns down. and it was like, that's the story, like, that's the benefit. So I wonder if there's any like if we're just looking at improvements, I understand why that's valuable, but from the pushback that I get is, yeah, but you're just asking me to spend money. Is there any other benefits that we could lead with to encourage this walk around education opportunity that would lead to
another benefit of walking with the inspector versus just looking at the report when they're done, that I find speaks to people and people find very helpful, is that the inspector can discuss options. When we're creating a report, we have to choose one button. So the button might be limb the trees above the shrubs or prune the shrubs low. And someone might say, look, my grandma planted that, or, those are my wife's favorite flowers. And the inspector can say, okay, let's look around at the circumstances and see how else we might achieve the same effect. That's an alternative to what sort of the standard recommendation would be. And the other one, so sort of customizing, providing options, and prioritizing. The report can be overwhelming, especially if people haven't had sort of the introduction to it, or sort of the groundwork laid from having the conversation. So the inspector can say, if the person is like, well, you gave me so much to do, I don't even know where to start. The inspector can sort of zoom in and say, look, the most important thing to do is, remove the juniper from under your bedroom window. And once you get that done, this and that, this and that. Our inspectors have so much information, and our report itself is already overwhelming, that meeting in person really helps the resident, the homeowner, sort of zero in on the information that's most useful to them. So I think some people are just going to be resistant, and some of it, I think, is just word of mouth. The more people that are open to it that get inspections, and the more they talk about it and share their experience, then their neighbor will say, okay, well, if Bob, had them come and he liked them, and, then I trust Bob. So I'm more interested in having them come to look at my property.
So 2 questions. I think, well, and this is just specific to Pine Forest, right? So I'm not going to speak, generally. I think the Pine Forest in general has, and some houses in particular, have done an amazing job of wildfire mitigation. I think the report could be a valuable tool for them in negotiating with insurance brokers, because they've done such a good work and it's third-party validated. Has that ever come up?
Yes, and people do use their report for that purpose.
Okay. So
I had a property owner in Glenshire who received a notice of non-renewal from his insurer. And the insurance agent said, here are the details for the California Fair Plan, but also, let's look at the report and see if they would consider rescinding the non-renewal. So he called us and said, look, these are all the things that I've done. These are what they're still telling me to do. What do you suggest I do? And can you give me a report? So we did the inspection on his property. I could see from the ground that he had limbed the tree above his roof by 20 or 30 feet, where from the aerial drone view that the insurance company had taken, they can't tell the distance. So I, went sort of above and beyond what we usually do and put into the comments on his report some additional details about the work that he had done. And he and his insurance agent submitted that to the insurance company, and they rescinded the non-renewal. And I can't say that that's going to happen in every case, but it did in his, and that gives me some hope that that is an opportunity for people, especially if people are having trouble with their insurance. We are happy to help and be involved and go, above and beyond what we're already providing on the inspections to do what we can to help demonstrate that they've done a lot of work.
I think that's amazing. The one thing about Pine Forest that also would be really helpful for insurance is we did that huge mitigation. Measure T did a huge mitigation project around 3/4 of the community, and then the other part is separated by a very large street. So we really have this kind of cushion that isn't being picked up on any of the risk reporting that insurance companies are using, and that would being able to bring that in as a community risk reduction, which is half of what they're insuring against, is something that we might follow up and ask Dylan and team and you guys to help with, because it really worked well for Steve's property, the big one behind us.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of a different aspect of reporting. But we do have on our CWPP site, so we have a map that shows, let me open up the legend here, planned and completed treatment projects. So we could open this up and zoom in to any particular neighborhood.
Yeah, you can.
Let's see. Yeah, there's you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the scope of the completed projects.
Yeah.
So we are providing this on a community level.
Yeah, so they could just take. I can make that for them. That's not a problem. They could also go do it themselves. They won't, but I can help them. The one challenge with this PPP is the risk went up for that particular neighborhood on the exact same moment that the mitigation was being completed. So it doesn't look like they're coordinated quite yet. The risk, it went from high to extreme, but whatever. That takes time for that.
Yeah, that's a different conversation, and there's lots of conversation and sort of asterisks and footnotes to be made about risk versus hazard, and how much completed fuel treatment is taken into account. So that's a
So-
different conversation though.
Yeah. And again, Bonnie, I'm just totally manipulating and dominating this conversation. So please redirect.
Yeah, Bonnie,
I feel
jump
like
in if you
I'm
have
Oh, no.
questions or
I'm just
suggestions.
I'm just finding it interesting.
It's been an interesting process to do the risk assessment with this team, with my board, and all this data and all this input from Maria. It's been really quite interesting. And then the last question that I have that I don't know if it's relevant. I'm thinking, because we're doing the inspections in our communities next year, I can promote the education element of it. And hey, if you have a great report, this is a third party verified data that we can share with your insurance companies. And by the way, here's the snapshot of the mitigation from our CWPP. Don't forget to negotiate, right? You know, it's up to you, but you can go negotiate. But the challenge, the leftover challenge that I have, and I don't know if this is relevant at the data level or the inspection level, is if I were to walk in our community, it's still heavily treed. It's still a forest. And depending on whose statistics you look at, whether it's 30 trees per acre, most of them have about 100 trees per acre, these historical lots. And they've lived here for a long time, so they don't see any reason to change the fuel load. In the inspection process, I know that there's like, it'd be really great if you called us back and we could walk through this together, because that's where the information transfer and the education really happens. Is there any possibility of, in our risk, after we do our risk analysis, if we set the conversation level differently with this community? Because deciduous trees next to homes are considered perfectly safe, and I don't know if they are or aren't. I have no knowledge of this, but there's no change in conversation at the design or the board level. And the number of trees and the thickness of trees isn't yet accepted at the design or the board level, because we're a forest, and so we should remain a forest. And I need a little bit of help to champion that conversation and that education in the inspection process. So for example, if there were trees that could be reduced on anybody's property, a letter from the FireAside tool will help us get them removed, because we can't get them removed without support from the fire district. When we go independent, we just get turned down. Anything over 5 inches for diameter is it's a huge fine if you tear it down. And so we have to get the committee and the board approval. And maybe I'm asking about dumb things, but it's like, you know, the roofs are good, the zone 0 is good, pretty good,
Yeah.
except for maybe these deciduous trees. And I don't know, you know,
I
the
think
windows are good, the siding's pretty good.
Sort of overall arch of what I'm hearing is that there's a need for continued education and outreach, right? It's not going to happen overnight, but Firewise is the structure through which, you know, you can bring us together with your board. And we've done that. I think did Eric come to and participate in one of the meetings
in October? And we'll have, you
right.
know, we'll begin, but I didn't realize that there would be pushback. I thought, hey, you know, there's this new information about tree spacing, and it came like a big wave of bad news and shock. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize. And this is just education. And it turns out that, you know, it's the same thing Eric's been saying, is that our old view of a forest being a lot of trees might have been a little outdated, and the new forest is a little different. So maybe that'll change in the next year, but that's the level of flagging. And you know what, this is a really, really well mitigated neighborhood, but that's probably like the one thing that they could really focus on. So it's like, we could just leave it for 3 years, or we could think about like how to encourage the education, because the challenge is the challenge is a little bit of a tops down. Once everybody's on the same page at the design level and the landscaping level, it'll percolate through
Well,
the community really quickly.
Yeah, I think it's a mix also because your HOA board is elected by people in the community. So hopefully through our inspections and engagement with residents and through the outreach that they're receiving through Firewise, the residents are receiving and sort of getting their heads around this change in their understanding of what a forest should look like. And that can feed, grassroots bottom up as well. So I understand totally that there are a lot of factors involved, and just because there's new information doesn't mean that people are going to accept it right away. And that's the really big challenge for Firewise leaders of not unfortunately, you can't just tell people, hey, I learned this information that we should be doing things differently. And get everyone involved right away. So I think those are great concepts actually to bring up in those the Tahoe Fire Adapted Community meetings that are talking about engaging and motivating and communicating with residents as to how to better do that. That's our challenge as well, how we communicate those things.
Yeah, I mean, from a data or a statistics point of view, it would, in this case, it would show up more in zone 2 and zone 3 or zone 1 and 2. And that's not really anyone's main focus. In the statistics,
that's true.
because the main stuff they're doing great, and they know they're doing great, and so it's kind of like, why do I need to spend 5 more minutes on this? And it's like, well, there's just one area that we might want to just tackle together. Anyway, so again, it's encouraging them. I mean, we'll try it this year. We'll try with if you get a great report, this is something that you can use to negotiate and leverage, and you're going to learn a bunch, and you're going to learn how to focus your resources that you have. If you only got 6 hours this year to spend on your yard, where should you spend them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
So let's move on to the next sort of section that we usually provide, which is a count of the defensible space violations found within the period of time and within whatever boundaries we set, which I honestly don't find particularly useful. The number of resolved violations, and this is dependent upon people actually reporting that they have resolved something or having us back out for a reinspection. We have self-reported stats for how much residents have spent in time and money on resolving those violations that they have resolved. And then we can do sort of a timeline either on month and year or on a yearly basis of violations that have been resolved within that time period.
It's interesting that we're collecting hours and time, because that's also what Firewise collects, but this isn't really the same metric. In our community, we're blessed to have a website that already collects data and it's already fully operational. But for a lot of new communities, they don't have that. Would this evolve, do you think, to replace that? Because it would be pretty amazing.
Doubt it.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I doubt it, because this is only capturing that information when it is associated with the violation has to be identified on someone's report, and then they have to go in and resolve it. So every time, the wind blows and you rake up pine needles on your property, that hasn't been documented as a violation that you then go in and resolve.
Well,
Uh,
plus it's the violation part of it is where there's a great public-private relationship that needs to remain different. You know, the
Yeah.
Firewise people, I don't want to be involved in violations and in any, because I,
Right. Yep.
yeah. I'll leave that to the
Yeah.
professionals
The-
and the
the other
other
thing-
people, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is that this is very roughly grouped, whereas the questions for Firewise are usually asked in more specific buckets to reflect
Yeah.
the way that the information is gathered on the Firewise portal application.
I wouldn't want this for my community to come from me ever. So I wouldn't want this for Firewise reporting in any way, shape, or form. For planning and risk analysis and recommendations on where to focus my education, yes, but this in my own community made a crossover that I had to truly back out of. There's a real, I don't want the fire department messing in my whatevers. And I'm like, I get it. You know, I'm just education. I'm not violations. I'm not whatever. I'm
Yep.
just education. And that worked well.
And that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Different communities
So-
handle that differently because it depending on the community, it can be very important to be clear about the distinction that the Firewise program is not about implementing or enforcing the fire district's inspections. The fire district isn't there inspecting because you're a Firewise community. Our programs run independently of the Firewise community. They happen across the district. So that's fair. Some communities do use this information, and because the relationship is different between the residents and either the HOA or whatever the association is, and between the residents and the fire district. So this is, the part of the reporting that I'm providing now is what is in theory going to be made publicly available. So that any resident can go and see, any Firewise leader can go and see, but it's still up to you as the Firewise leader, which of the important information you pull out and specifically present to your community, however you want to present it.
And then if
Maria?
you, sorry, Bonnie, go ahead.
Is this all information just from Eastern Nevada County?
This
Or
is
parts of
from
West?
this is from the Truckee Fire Protection District, and it's just inspections that Truckee Fire has done. So it actually doesn't include Tahoe Donner's inspections right now. And the Truckee Fire District includes part of unincorporated Nevada County, part of unincorporated Placer County, and all of the incorporated town of Truckee.
Thank you.
Of course.
You know what might be an interesting visual for this one is violations by geography. So you get a sense of more like that risk map. Is that too exposing?
I'm not sure. The FireAside has not prioritized a sort of heat map, so to speak, for this. They it's not something that is readily available in the reporting for whatever reason. I think there are concerns about, privacy level and that sort of thing. Once we make the information public, and there will be a drop down to select the Firewise community that you want to look at, so people could do their own comparisons. But in terms of a kind of heat map, we're not pursuing that.
And again, it's that relative focus. Is this an area that is a problem for this particular Firewise community, or are we we seeming to be not, again, where would I focus the education? Okay.
Right, right. Are we keeping up with the rest of the neighborhoods? Are we pulling our weight? Are we sort of ahead of the curve? For sure. The next section is one of the sections that I'm most uncomfortable with how it's presented. It looks like it got quite skewed anyway on here, but I have put in my own sort of clarification here. So we have reporting for the top 10 total defensible space violations, and then we have it available per zone. I've just included here the top 10 zone 0 violations. What I find is, and then it looks like it does actually work. If you hover over it, it tells you the total count of that particular violation. So 3,968 additional spacing violations identified. Okay, we do have clarification here that this includes counts of issues and violations which were reported during the date period and are still unresolved. So this isn't counting anything that was found, it's counting these unresolved outstanding violations.
And is the
during this
date
period.
Adjustable?
We're still, it's,
Okay.
yes, it's adjustable. One of the challenges is that the public facing report doesn't have the date filter available. So if I wanted to enable you to look at 2024 versus 2025, I have to create a separate report for each one of those. You then can say, the entire Truckee Fire District 2024, and then compare it to Pine Forest 2024. And then on the other report, change the zone that you are filtering it to, but not by date.
Yeah.
The other challenge that I see here is that for our reporting purposes and for the purposes of giving direction on the report, it's useful to have a distinction between additional spacing tree and additional spacing shrub. I find that presenting the information in this very detailed way feels overwhelming to people and not particularly useful. I prefer to group together categories into the concepts. So additional spacing tree, additional spacing shrub, tree requires limbing. Those are all really about creating separation between vegetation. So I prefer to talk about it that way rather than tell people the top findings are this one and this one and this one. Really, if I look at, the tree map, I see that as a group, the most common finding is separation of vegetation.
Well, and it also, it doesn't have the ability to prioritize risk, to your point, like.
Correct. It's just based on the findings.
Yeah.
So in other words, this is mostly aggregate data for use
Indeed.
internally by Firewise, not by the Firewise leaders so much.
It's a combination. Yeah, it's a combination. The data itself is raw. The way that it is presented is sort of still being massaged. So, the idea here is for you guys to see what I can provide you and for you to say, like Heather just did, maybe it would be more helpful to somehow incorporate severity or level of hazard into a tree map. Because I can do that subjectively and sort of say, these are your most important issues rather than your most common issues.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how the data guys will actually quantify that, I don't know, but that's their job.
again,
Well, all
you
of this
probably
is
have, like,
growing so fast since I first started this. I just
Yes.
inherited it as well. And it's like I'm running to stay up with all of the data.
well, I'm trying to give
Yeah.
people clear direction in the 3 minutes of attention span they have for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I just
That can be
educate
challenging.
ad nauseum, just trying to get them to read what I send.
Yeah, exactly. And
But,
you know
yeah.
what I encourage people in your situation, Bonnie, is you don't have to do the heavy lift. If you get them to get us on their property, then we can have those conversations with them. You know, it's
Yeah.
not your guys' job to teach them everything that they need to know, but you know, hopefully the community engagement piques their interest, you know, helps them realize that it's something that is worth putting time towards, and then sort of saying, great, I'm glad you're interested. Let me introduce you to a defensible space inspector that will walk your property with you and answer all of your questions.
I was just telling my husband this morning as I'm out doing defensible space all over the property, I said, I am the last person in the community, we're in Juniper Hill, that should be doing Firewise because I resist every tree that has to be cut down and every bush. Like a
Well,
hypocrite. But
I mean, I
I'm doing my
understand.
best, and so is the
I
community.
understand that. And that's another one of those sort of shifts in perspective that I've learned since I started working with the fire district, which is that it's not the current state of our forest is not actually healthy for the trees in it. So
Right.
if we care about and if we want to foster the health of our trees, we have to cull the unhealthy ones. And so I think it's sort of a shift in perspective. People say, well, I love the trees. I don't want to cut any of them. And it's a misplacement sort of the intention. People's intention is to, you know, they love nature and they care for the forest.
Mhm.
Well, helping them understand that their current actions are actually to the detriment of the thing that they love is a way of starting to bring people around to understand the changes that need to happen.
My personal
Yeah.
concern is the elimination of all the brush. And because some properties up here have masticated to the nth degree. And to me, that's not a forest anymore. Uh, it looks park-like, but it's not a forest. There are no bushes, no vegetation. And I don't like that extreme. So,
Sure, I
and
understand that. And especially when the work has just been done, it looks very just disturbed and like you
very
said. It can
bleak.
take a while for the landscape to recover, but it will. I mean, look where it is now. It's somewhere that the
I
pendulum
know,
swings, right? The pendulum has swung
right.
from how extreme it was and densely overvegetated to the level of treatment necessary to roll it back so that it can recover to a healthy, maintainable state.
Right. The front of our road, which was actually, you used it at the poster, the before and after. Well,
Mm-hmm.
everything's grown back. I don't know if you've seen it, but everything's grown back to about 3 feet. So we're already talking about cleaning it up again. So I
Yeah,
do understand that. I,
yeah.
I just, I'm just, I guess I am a tree hugger. So I try to do
Sure.
everything in moderation.
It's really interesting. Like I've gone back to properties where, and my I'm not a grower of anything barely. So not my property because it's a new build and it doesn't have much, but I've gone back to properties where people have put 20 years of investment in decoration of trees and landscaping, and it's a very beautiful thing. And then this news comes barreling in that there's risk, and they, some of them just say, well, I understand risk, I'm a retired fire responder or from the fire district, and I get this. And then they re-landscape it, and it's actually really interesting to see how much more beautiful they end up making it, visually beautiful, but also very, very fire safe. And I think even in my own community that's happened, but I don't know how to highlight it, because it's like people have digested the information about fire safe planting and watering and, you know, all that design, waterscape design and space. They've kind of ingested it, and then it comes back. It's a different kind of beauty, and I'd love for that to come out, because the initial trimming of everything, I'm still trying to figure out what's risky and not risky. And my focus would be, I really want my community in particular I want us to survive. I want us to be resilient. And then secondarily, I want us to thrive. And it's different landscaping and different techniques and different stuff. That's a huge amount of learning.
How large are your properties, Heather?
Well, I live in pine forest, and they're typically in 1 acre lots, and they're anywhere from 15 years old to brand new. So it's a relatively new development. But the forest wasn't mitigated prior to that, and so it was surrounded by a very, very high populated forest. And then the Tundra grant, the Measure T Tundra grant last year, cleared out 500 acres. It was big.
Wow.
Around it, and it looks barren. And we got attacked by woodpeckers, and the ravens weren't very happy in the spring. But you know, it still looks pretty barren because it's pretty new in that mitigated area. But I'm, you know, I know the community is a lot safer because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Our properties are 20 acres.
15 minutes left.
So, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, we've only got about 15 minutes left, and there's, I wanted to have some time to show you guys the green waste stats that we have, and see if you have any, see if you have any feedback about that. Sorry to cut you off, Bonnie.
I love the green waste.
Good. Well, we have some interesting stats available. And so again, what I'm showing you guys is the data for the whole district. And this is actually, as of this year, includes Tahoe Donner's pickup. But so the data is for all time when we started using the software to now. The starts off with new versus repeat users. And we have the capacity to show this in a couple of different ways, by month and year, by year, and then just as a percentage of the whole. And this is helpful for us, and I think also for communities to understand how much how many of their residents know and are making use of the program, to understand if it's still worth it to, you know, do that additional education and outreach to make sure that people are aware the program's available. We also have total cubic yards collected. This is, of course, a challenge of reporting. It's subjective reporting of the contractor as they pick up. They calculate how many cubic yards of material they've collected. So we have that year by year as a total number. And then we also have an average, which I really like to see these two together, that even with an average pile of 6 cubic yards, we've still collected roughly 65,000 cubic yards of material. So again, it's sort of more, you can get your head around it a little better when it's on a community level, but I like it because it shows that it really is, one trailer load at a time, one pickup truck at a time that is making this significant difference. We also then have, again, self-reported hours and time spent on the production of the pile. So residents report this when they submit the pickup request. This information we do actually provide and help input into the Firewise application. So there's some overlap of data there, but the truth is all of our Firewise communities significantly exceed all of their risk reduction activity requirements. So we think it's a good stat to share with each of the communities. Do you guys have questions about those or thoughts on what else we might provide?
Well,
I'm a bit greedy. I so much appreciate the reimbursement for 2 6-yard bins.
Yeah.
But now I think, can we raise it up to 3 or 4? Because
well,
it's just
that
a
limitation
thought,
is actually, yeah, that limitation is actually set by the county's service agreement with TTSD. So I believe that it limits Placer County, well, it limits to 2 dumpsters apiece per property. So you wouldn't even be able to rent an additional 6-yard dumpster. So you've sort of maxed out the capacity by getting the 2-yard dumpsters or the 2 6-yard dumpsters. The other option, though, Bonnie, that a lot of communities are making use of, and I don't think Juniper Hill has yet, is the Firewise dumpster reimbursement, which can, the Firewise community can rent a 20 or 30-yard dumpster for a community workday and get 100% reimbursement of that cost. So that is something that we can circle up with Brittany on and sort of talk about some ideas for how you guys might do that. But what a lot of communities do is like post the dumpster in some communal location, and then I imagine a lot of your neighbors and property owners have their own heavy equipment. So they could make their piles and then someone could come and pick it up in whatever dumpster or whatever they have. If they have a chipper, they can chip the material into the dumpster and thereby, make use of the rebate program to get rid of a lot more material than you can individually with the 6-yard dumpster.
We have talked about that, but no one could agree on where the dumpster should be placed because nobody wants to see that dumpster on their property. But I have to say that I guess I got away with renting a 3rd one, which I paid for. And I didn't know that I wouldn't be allowed to do that. Nobody stopped me. And so I filled 3 of them with pine needles, and I am so
Great.
appreciative of that. Yes.
Good for you.
I still have a pile, but I don't know. We'll do something with
Good
it,
for
probably
you.
burn it.
Yeah. Well, it's possible that I'm mistaken about the limits on the number of dumpster rentals that you can do. But like you said, doing pile burning after the first snowfall when the fire ban is lifted is a great alternative option. And there are a number of agencies in the area that are really encouraging and supporting residential pile burning. Have you do you have experience with it? And
Oh, yes.
whether you do or don't, both the Placer and Nevada County Resource Conservation Districts, the RCDs, are doing a lot of work with residents to increase understanding and acceptance of pile burning.
No, we used to do it totally many years ago. And now, so we've had experience with it. We also have a retired fire person who helped us because we're a lot older than when we used to do it years ago.
Yeah.
So it works all together.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful
Great.
for those dumpsters. So grateful. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad. Well, and that's a
What-
good point also, that ideally we'd like to be able to include info about the dumpster rebates into the system, but that's a little further down the line.
What's the denominator for your cubic yards average? Is it per home, reporting home?
Per pickup.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm preparing my third
Yeah, per pickup.
pickup.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Good for you,
I'd be
Bonnie.
curious to know, like, at the HOA level, how much we use, because our HOA, we learned in the middle of this year, they don't want little piles, so they actually pay the cottages to do it themselves and ship it because they live here.
Right.
And so we have like a private picker upper and shipper. But I think I know some of them had green dumpsters, and some of them you may have used the grapple hook.
Yeah.
And then our average per home is right now is 6.25 cubic yards for the season for the reporting people. Which
Right.
isn't everybody. We're trying to get to everybody. That's one of the goals.
You could do, I mean, you could do your own average per household. If I provided you with the total number of pickups. No, that's, you would want total number of users, I guess, to do a per household average.
Yeah.
Well, again, to your point, we tend to over exceed the minimum Firewise requirements.
Of course.
I'm curious, it's this idea of how's my community doing relative to other communities? And there's this, scoreboardy game mentality for certain types of residents. So yeah, that would be interesting, I think, is what's the typical average, or what's the average by certain communities, or what's the general average, and then I can come in and chime in and say ours is this, because we of course track that.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
That means we have to have an award, a ceremony.
Well,
yeah.
yes.
Well, in our annual report, we do, I believe the year before last, we did a total number of cubic yards by Firewise community. And there were a couple of the smaller communities said, hey, that's not fair. Sierra Meadows is massive. So what about a per resident? And so I think we did then include a average per dwelling or parcel or something along those lines. So in our annual report, we do have that. So you guys can
Okay, I'll go look it up.
Can use that. But again,
Yeah.
that's just the grapple truck pickup data. It's not taking into consideration the dumpsters, which is a factor.
Yeah.
The last piece of info that I include here is timeline and count of the successful pickups. And the reason I say successful pickups is because we also have unsuccessful pickups, which this unfortunately failed to load, but this gives us a breakdown of the contractor. If they can't pick up the pile, then it could be for a variety of reasons. Either it's ineligible material, it's not properly stacked, they couldn't find the pile where it was said to be located, for example. So generally, I don't see, obvious trends on a community level that are particularly worth, reporting. If we did see that, then we might reach out and say, can you help us with education around how to properly stack the pile? But is this information interesting to you guys in any way, being able to see year over year what your successful pickups are or anything like that?
No, I don't think so.
Because our HOA is more proactive, they don't want pickups to be left. And the cost to them is trivial. So I don't think so. Unless they pull that service, and then we're engaging a little bit more detail.
Yeah, that makes sense. One interesting trend that we did see was when I pulled some information for Serene Lakes, they had a huge spike in green waste pickups around the time of the Royal Fire up there. So presumably with the fire in the community and the firefighters passing through for suppression operations, that was very motivating for people to get rid of some of that fuel.
Good.
So those are interesting trends for us to see.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We joke about
that's the extent of my
store.
Sorry,
and then
what
we
was
know
that?
it's
Quick question.
I said we joke about starting a little fire next door to motivate people, and then we know it's a joke, so we stop that.
Just some pretend smoke. When they come and chip the piles that I leave, can I request that the chips be left?
Good question. The first year of the program, we did offer both haul away and chipping, but for a variety of reasons, we sort of streamlined operations and only do haul away now. So they don't have the capacity to chip on site. It's maybe something to consider on a Firewise community level, investing in or applying for a grant for a community chipper that would help with fuel reduction.
I think we've been very we've profited greatly from grants. We have 2 more this year, as you know, so I won't be greedy on that.
Well, something to think about. It may be, we have other communities that have property owners with large acreage that have their own equipment. So maybe it's something that, on a community level, someone can even offer to provide the service. If you guys do a community work day and put your piles at the corner, that they chip and leave the chips, or chip into somebody's truck that then takes the chips to where you want them placed. A lot of options for how you can sort of pool resources.
We have a couple of people that do have a chipper. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to clean out all the dead manzanita, and all the scrapes and cuts on my body are living proof. Should I submit that with my annual report?
That stuff,
I have
right.
Band-Aids like crazy.
Firewise should tally money, time, and blood, sweat, and tears spent as well.
Definitely.
We'll get some long sleeve pants and some arm guards. Make sure to wear eye protection. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for spending the time and giving me feedback. I hope this was helpful for you. And I'm going to spend some time putting together the feedback that you gave and see what FireAside, the software provider, can change, put together for us so that we can make this useful for you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the reports that I showed you, I'm going to make them filterable for your communities so that you can see them. I can't presently make a report available for each calendar year. I can only do year to date and all time. So that's one of the asks to be able to let you see, you know, Pine Forest 2022, Pine Forest 2023. But I'll make these reports available to you guys for your communities as a thank you for participating and helping me so much. And I'll send you a specific link for your community.
That'd be cool.
Thank you, Maria. And thank you, Heather. It was interesting listening to your questions.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Yes.
Sorry, I
Of
was
course.
so dumb. Would
Thanks,
it
Bonnie.
would it be possible to add that link to our community website, do you think? Will it live?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah, it'll be a live link on at our page. It won't be like
Yeah, it'll go through to you
yeah,
guys.
it'll be a live
But-
website hosted
Yeah.
on our page, right? But not linked anywhere within the report. So you can feel free, it's public facing information. So you can feel free to add that URL to your site.
Okay, one of the action plan approved, I think it got approved, is to improve the website to have more local information. And that seems, at first I was really pushing against it, but it seems like that really matters to people. They want their community, their data, their action plan, and then they want to see the results against that to try and again get them to buy into the not the we got the certificate and that's our goal, but to buy into the process. So we'll
Great.
see. I'll let you know if it works.
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see the idea of Firewise providing this reporting was for us to be able to embed it into the website. And it's still sort of in a beta version that we're still giving them a lot of feedback that we're not ready to embed it into the website in its current state. But being able to share it with you and have you put it into your website will be a good sort of beta test of how it's received and what sort of feedback people give or subsequent questions they ask for us to be able to turn that around to the software team.
Sure.
Cool.
Thank you, ladies. I have
Thank
to
you,
Of
guys.
leave.
course, thank you. And thanks so much,
Have a good
Heather.
evening. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
You too.
Always.
All right. Thanks so much, Heather.